Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube, and welcome to part 2, the finale of the 3,000 subscriber Q&A series. Now there is, if anybody's keeping track at home, 6 segments, including this one, in this particular 3,000 subscriber Q&A. I did get asked a lot of in-depth questions that I had to answer on camera, so as a result, this is the final 6th segment in this particular series. Now, if you asked a question back on September 13th when I posted the video soliciting questions for this Q&A series, and you notice that throughout any of these segments, I did not answer your question, please let me know in the comment section below, repeat the question, and I will make sure that it is answered, even if we have to do like a bonus Q&A session, or if I roll it into an upcoming 3,500 subscriber Q&A series. But I will make sure your question does get answered on camera. I want you to know that. So we're going to dive right in because we got a lot of ground to cover. First question. Hi, Sean. What is your opinion on the alteration of sports cards that appear to have been graded by PSA as unaltered? This has shaken my confidence in grading a bit. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to answer this by starting off with a very generic statement, but it needs to be said. All grading companies out there, any respectful grading companies out there, whether we're talking about coin grading, comic book grading, video game grading, toy grading, sports card grading, Magic the Gathering grading, Pokemon grading, whatever collectible it is, any reputable third-party grading company out there that still exists today has already made a mistake in some of the items they have graded. That's how they learn, guys. I hate to say this, but there is not a reputable grading company out there that hasn't made a mistake to a certain instance with something that they graded. And I'm not just talking about they graded the item conditionally wrong, meaning somebody sends in a comic book that should be in 9.2 condition. The grading company looks at it and says, oh, this is a 9.4 and ships it out the door. That happens all the time because grading is very subjective. It's an art more than a science. So you got to understand that. But when we're talking about counterfeits or altered pieces getting in the holders, that does happen from time to time. It's more important how the grading company handles that mistake. Are they admitting the mistake? Number 1. Are they learning from the mistake? Number 2. Number 3, are they taking action on that mistake? And what I mean by that, that's twofold. Number 1, if there's a scammer out there that found a way to get some of these altered cards graded by PSA and they got them past the graders, are companies like PSA banning these submitters from submitting these fraudulent cards? Number 1. Number 2, on the flip side, if these items are getting through the graders and they are coming out the other end as a finalized product, is the company doing anything to get them off the market? Let me use this as a perfect example. Back in 2015, it was brought to my attention from a high-profile client that I have as a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade that a certain grading company graded a particular item completely incorrectly, where it was an altered item that got through to the graders and it got out into the marketplace. Now, I am generalizing here because I don't want to run that grading company or the auction house in question through the mud. In my opinion, they already got run through the mud, unfairly as well. Let me explain. When this gentleman pointed out this error to both the auction company and the grading company, both of them did the most ethical thing possible. The auction company offered to buy the item back, meaning give the gentleman a 100% refund for that item if he would return it to them. He returned it to the auction company, and the auction company did the ethical thing, reached out to the grading company, who then reimbursed the auction company for that full amount, and they took the item off the market and destroyed it. Now, if you read some of the collecting forums out there with a lot of unsophisticated speculators, a lot of uneducated investors, they're going to tell you that third-party grading is a sham because of incidents like this. That is not true. Third-party grading always does more good than harm when it's done in a respectful manner by a respected third-party grading company. Now, what I mean by that is grading, when done right, injects confidence and liquidity into the marketplace. And that is paramount, guys. Some of you guys love to argue with me. Sean, graded video games are going to be the next big thing. They're selling for tens of thousands of dollars. Sean, did you see the price of that Charizard card in Pokemon or the price of that Magic the Gathering card? And I say, that's wonderful. What is your point? Well, look what third-party grading did to those prices. And I have to stop you and say third-party grading didn't do that. The confidence that third-party grading brings to the market is what attracts liquidity, and it attracts other collectors and investors. That's why a lot of these markets that are speculative right now, and I just named 3 of them, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and graded video games, the reason why they have all these speculators that are going after this stuff, bidding extremely high price points, is because of liquidity. They know if they need to cash out their holdings or if they need to sell, all they need to do is call up an auction house and go, hey, I got a 9.4 WADA graded Legend of Zelda factory sealed right here from 1987. Will you put this in your auction? Or on the flip side, I have a Charizard card from 1999 in a PSA 10 holder. Can I get it consigned? And the answer is usually always yes for that particular reason. So grading is not a scam. What it is more art than science. And that's what you have to get in your mind whenever you get involved in these markets. And I think if you learn from this, that will probably help restore some of your confidence in some of these grading companies. Because there's people out there that literally make a lot of money just looking for items from grading companies that were either undergraded or overgraded, especially in coins. When we talk about coins, what is it that I always tell you guys? Coins are a sophisticated market in the trade. I know, at least on one hand, I can count how many experienced coin dealers who have decades of experience in the trade. They literally log on to a lot of these auction sites, or pre-pandemic times, they would go to a lot of coin shows and they would look for undergraded coins sitting in holders. They would buy them, they would crack them out, they would send them back to the grading company, hope they came back in a higher grade, and they would flip them for a ton more money. And there's a lot of people I know that literally bought 2 or 3 houses just with the profits that they were making by being able to do that on a consistent basis. It's actually called the Crackout Game. If you've ever read the book, and I recommended it already on this channel, The Coin Collector's Survival Manual, if you read that book, there's actually a chapter devoted to playing the Crackout Game. Now, am I recommending that the average person coming into these markets start off doing that? No, you're going to get eaten by the sharks out there that pretty much control that market right now. It's a very sophisticated market in the trade. But what I'm going at here is all grading companies make a mistake. It's how they handle that mistake over the short term and over the long term that matters. So I hope that helps. Next question. Sean, recently a prototype Super Mario Bros. 3 sold on auction for $31,200. Yes, I am aware of this sale. This was not a prototype. It was a sample. In the antiques trade, what happens when something is mislabeled, mislisted, with incorrect information, and sold by an auction house? Is anyone liable? Do buyers get X amount of time to challenge the sale? What is it that I always tell you guys about the antiques and collectibles trade? By and large, the trade is unregulated. The antiques and collectibles trade, pretty much 80 to 90% of the time, is an unregulated market. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at like the market for collectible ivory products, that is regulated. If you look at the market for collectible firearms, to a certain degree, that's regulated. If you look at the market for fossils, antiquities, certain items in that realm of the antiques and collectibles trade, that market can, in certain instances, also be regulated. But by and large, if you want to buy a graded video game, if you want to buy a graded Pokemon card, if you want to buy a raw Pokemon card, or if you want to buy coins, currency, antiques, collectibles, by and large, the market is completely unregulated. Now, you see where I'm going with this. When you log on to any of these auction sites, or even if you go bid in person, when you register to bid, or when you go to bid, chances are it comes up terms and conditions of sale. You have to click this box and agree to it. Guess what? The auction company does its best to protect their own interests. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complex, guys, because it's easy for a lot of you out there to blame the auction company. Auction companies, by and large, are not in the business of upsetting their customers, and they're certainly not in the business of upsetting their consignors. Remember, an auction company is kind of in a quagmire. They have to represent, from a fiduciary responsibility, their sellers and consignors on one end, and on the other end of the spectrum, they also have to represent their buyers, because without buyers, there would be no sellers. That's what makes up the market. So as a result, auction companies generally find themselves in a very interesting predicament from time to time, because sometimes there's a dispute with a seller where a seller consigns them something and the seller says, you know what, I know this is in near mint authentic condition, and the auction house gets it. They let their experts look at it and they say, I'm sorry, Mr. Timmy Smith or Timmy Poindexter, this antique that you're trying to get us to consign is not legit. We're not going to take it. We're not going to represent you in that manner so that somebody comes on our site, they buy this particular item because you think it's legit, and we sell them this item, and guess what? It turns out that they are very unhappy with our services. We can't have that happen. On the flip side of the equation, you will sometimes get an auction house that agrees to take a collection, an auction house that agrees to take an item. Maybe it is third-party graded. A buyer buys it and says, wait a minute, I don't think this item is as described or as stated. So you want to know with your question what recourse that buyer has. Well, ironically, not much, unless the auction company themselves decides to help the buyer with that particular purchase and admits wrongdoing or says, you know what, we feel sorry for you. We understand how you feel. We don't want you going to the internet slandering our reputation. We'll make this right in this one instance. So it's really up to the auction house how they want to work with that buyer. Now, let me tell you guys something else. Most reputable auction houses, even on the high-end antique side of the trade, even on the high-end art side of the trade, where you see some of these art auctions selling for mind-boggling numbers, where paintings are selling for 10, 50, $100 million. Most of those auction houses only employ a few high-profile experts in those fields. So guess what? If the auction company looks at an item, they give it to their experts, and the experts come back and they say, yeah, looks legit, put it in the sale as it's listed. And a buyer comes along, buys that item, and disputes that claim. Overall, even if that buyer goes to court, he will most likely lose because he agreed to the terms and conditions of that auction house. The auction house can come back and state, well, wait a minute. You logged on, you bid at $10 million for this painting. You knew ahead of time that this sale pretty much was as is, as listed. You never sent us an email. You didn't call us. You didn't ask one question about the item that you just bought. You just got caught up in the bidding. You bid it on the item. You won the item. You paid for it. Now you're upset. What is it that you would like us to do? So this is a really gray area in the trade that few people realize. And that's why as a buyer or collector or investor or speculator in the antiques and collectibles trade, you have to do your own due diligence. You know, one of the videos that I did early on in this channel was a video that I compared the grading scale of VGA, Video Game Authority, to that of Wada Games. Now, what was interesting about that video is when the comments started coming in on that particular video, a lot of people out there said, wow, this is a mind-blowing video. I have $50,000 worth of graded video games, and I never knew that there was a difference between the VGA grading scale and the Wada Games grading scale. Now, comments like that blew my mind. Why are you spending $50,000 in a market where you don't even know the differences between the two top-tier grading companies and how they grade the items that you're buying? You have to have knowledge to get involved in these markets, guys. Please do not be a Timmy S. Poindexter and come into these markets with dollar signs in your eyes, thinking that all collectibles go up in value over the long term. No, they don't. I have videos planned where I'm going to prove that to you. There's a lot of markets that crashed and burned. And a lot of those markets were on the established and mature side of the trade. Speculative markets, if they even get to the established and mature side of the trade, are inherently risky. You guys must assess risk versus reward. And that's really what your question comes down to. You must understand that if you get screwed in the antiques and collectibles trade, unlike Wall Street, unlike the financial markets, there's no SEC. There's no one to go and complain and make your case to where, well, wait a minute, I bought X number of shares of XYZ stock, and it turns out that company was engaged in an accounting scandal. So therefore, I bought at $40 a share. The stock dropped to $10 a share as a result. That company should be liable for the $30 loss I took on each share of stock that I bought. That doesn't occur in the antiques and collectibles trade, guys. These are at-risk markets. You must understand that. More videos are going to be coming on this channel about that particular topic. Next question. Sean, what are your thoughts on the Delorean car market? Full disclosure, I have inside knowledge on this particular market. I did at one point in my life own a DeLorean, so I speak firsthand how I'm going to answer your question. Sean, it's a collectible car and a pop culture icon. The prices have jumped quite a bit over the past few years. Is this the time to sell or to hold on to these particular items? First of all, DeLoreans by and large are exotic cars. They are a money pit. They are not an investment. Do not come to the market thinking this is great. I can buy a DeLorean car for 30 grand used. I can drive it around town and everyone's going to look at me and I'm going to be cool. Yes, to be fair, if you have the money to do that, you can. I've done it. But the problem is DeLoreans are known for electrical issues. They're known for faulty transmissions, and getting ports for a DeLorean and getting them fixed is a bitch, guys. I've been there. Do not make the mistake thinking you're going to be the one who's going to buy one of these cars. You're going to work on it yourself, or your local mechanic is going to work on it willingly. Your local mechanic is going to look at this thing and go, dude, why don't you just get like a Honda or a Chevy or a Ford and make my life easier? Or if you have money to spend, like me, I drive a Mercedes. I drive a Mercedes CLA 250 Coupe. Before I owned my Mercedes CLA 250 Coupe, I owned a Mercedes C300. I'll probably buy another Mercedes again after I'm done with this car. But to be fair, if my Mercedes breaks down, I take it to the Mercedes dealership. Now, they give me a very big repair bill when they work on my car. It's a Mercedes. However, I don't have to worry about driving a car where if I take it to a local mechanic, they roll their eyes and go, what the hell am I supposed to do with this thing? So that's the situation you're going to be in if you own a DeLorean. Now, I know some of my critics out there, Sean, I go to Scotty's Garage in Anytown, USA. He's great with my DeLorean. He knows the in and outs and he takes care of it. That's wonderful. You're still going to have a problem if you need to get parts for that car. There is a company in Texas, I'm going to tell you all this up front, that does stock original DeLorean parts that were made back in the 1980s. The problem is they are very expensive to get, and even if you get them shipped to you, you then have to take the part along with the car to your mechanic and get it installed. And most mechanics do not like working on DeLoreans. It's just like people reach out to me and they go, Sean, I want to buy a Porsche, or I want to buy a Ferrari, or if you got the money, I want to buy a Lamborghini. First of all, those cars are exotics. They are not investments. They are money pits to own. Even Mercedes. Some of you guys out there, you reach out to me via email and you go, Sean, I saw this awesome Mercedes that I can get pre-owned for 35 grand. And what is it that I tell you guys in my email? Do you have the money to spend to fix, maintain, and keep that car in tip-top condition on the road? If you do, then go out and buy it. But understand, Mercedes charges, any Mercedes dealership charges on average $200 an hour to work on your car. So even if you take a Mercedes into the shop just to get something simple repaired, Overall, you're going to expect, just on average, a $500 repair bill. If they have to do anything major, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to get that car fixed. I know firsthand. That's why I don't buy pre-owned Mercedes. Okay? That's why, guys. So those of you that reach out to me for advice on that, what is it that I tell you? If you can afford to spend $35,000 on a used Mercedes, you should be able to afford $45,000 or $50,000 on a new Mercedes. So just learn from this. Cars are not investments. They are money pits. Even those of you out there that drive a Kia, a Toyota, a Honda, that pretty much are economical cars that get good gas mileage, low maintenance costs, those cars, when they break down, they still need work. It's not an investment, guys. Please learn from this. Do not get involved in the vintage antique car market unless, if you're a mechanic, you know how that market works. You're buying to flip those cars, meaning you're buying like a 69 Chevy. You're going to fix it up. You're going to refurbish it. And you're going to sell it because you have the know-how to do that. That's how you make money in that market, not by buying cars like DeLoreans. Very few people are looking to buy a used DeLorean. You are in the minority. Next question. Sean, do reboots, remakes, revivals bring a new surge into collectibles from the original era, or does it devalue them? For instance, if I were to make a reboot of, let's say, Bonanza, would original Bonanza merchandise skyrocket in the marketplace? If you recall, a couple of years back, Disney tried to revive the Lone Ranger property. They even casted Johnny Depp in the movie. The movie was a flop. Look, guys, this is what I tell you guys, and some of you guys argue with me on this point. Most collectibles are linear. Antiques are cyclical. Western-based toy collectibles from Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Lone Ranger, Hopalong Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid, yes, some of those items still have some value in the secondary market, but they are never coming back. There's never going to be a revival of that genre of those toys. For those of you that argue superhero toys are the future, I guarantee you at some point in the future, superhero collectibles, comic books, vintage toys, and the like are going to start to die out. Now, I'm going to give you one more example to prove my point. If you remember back in 2012, it was actually right around the election, believe it or not, between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. October of 2012, George Lucas made the announcement that everybody was shocked by. He had sold Lucasfilm to Disney for $4 billion. And Disney immediately announced that they were putting into production new Star Wars movies and sequels. Well, at that particular point, speculators, collectors, unsophisticated investors got all excited and they started bidding up a lot of the higher end Star Wars toys and collectibles from the vintage coveted era. Now, ironically, a lot of you like to argue, see that, Sean, when a reboot's announced, all of these particular pieces go up in value. Well, you're not studying the market well enough, because if you look at what happened when The Force Awakens finally debuted it in the year 2015, the market went like this. It went up, then it immediately dropped and stabilized. Why did that happen? Because there's no way that particular movie, The Force Awakens, coming out in 2015, could ever live up to the hype of the original franchise that launched back in the 70s and 80s, guys. So you must understand that remakes, even if it's of a popular property or a popular franchise, they do not always reignite long-term interest into that property. This is why I tell comic book collectors, what is it that I always tell comic book collectors? Sell into the movie hype. Do not buy into it. If you're one of these idiots right now that is clamoring for a Tomb of Dracula 10, first appearance of Blade, or a Werewolf by Night 32, first appearance of Moon Knight, because you read somewhere, oh my gosh, the new Tomb of Dracula or Blade movie's coming out soon, or they might do a movie on Moon Knight, you're an idiot. You're buying into the hype. Smart money sells into the hype. You can't call yourself an investor when you are paying an inflated price for an asset. That's not investing. That's stupidity. That's speculation. Don't do that. So I hope that answers your question in depth. But just remember what happened with The Lone Ranger. That movie flopped for a reason. Westerns are not making a comeback in that manner. Next question. Sean, what is your opinion on the vintage Scream movie mask market as a long-term investment. It seems to have a very strong following, and I just found out that they used several different masks with slightly different face molds for various different scenes in the original movies. Okay, full disclosure. Back in 1996, 1997, I was a young Sean, and I love the movie Scream. The movie Scream debuted from Wes Craven, and I thought it was an instant classic. I literally saw that film probably 10 different times in the theater when it came out. That's how much I loved the plot line and the concept of that film. I have not been that excited for a horror film since the original Saw movie franchise debuted in 2004, I think? So Saw and Scream are my two favorite horror movie franchises of all time. Now, let's analyze this, though, properly. The Scream movie franchise is not something that is going to be able to be easily rebooted and go on indefinitely. So as a result, this is a very niche market. Therefore, I do not look at these particular items as a good long-term investment. If you have the money, you want to go to the market, you want to buy one of these particular props because you connect with the movie, you do you, but don't call it an investment. Overall, movie props are actually a very bad long-term investment in the antiques and collectibles trade. Did you know that? I actually have a video that's stuck in development hell right now where I go over this particular topic and I cite certain examples. Unless if it's from a major iconic movie, I'm talking Star Wars, Star Trek, Wizards of Oz, Citizen Kane, something of that caliber. Overall, any type of props, any type of movie-related collectibles and memorabilia are overall bad investments over the long term. Scream is too much of a niche market to try to invest in. As much as I loved the first movie, I even enjoyed the second one. I think the franchise fell off the rails, though, when it got to the third and fourth films. The fourth film, in my opinion, was a flop. I don't see them ever recovering from that particular movie. I'm going to be very honest. So that's why, in my opinion, very niche market. I would not do this for the long term. Next question. Sean, would you consider releasing the audio of your videos as a podcast? At present time, given the fact that this channel is still relatively small, I know my critics love to argue with me. No, Sean, in 18 months, you have over 3,000 subscribers. That's amazing on YouTube. I get it. Whatever side of the fence you on, whether you think I'm a small fry or whether you think I'm somebody that's really coming up through the YouTube algorithm, let me just state this. Due to the amount of time it takes me just to produce those videos, at present time, it is not worth it for me to veer off in podcast form. Now, I will promise you, if this channel gets 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, even 50,000 subscribers, I'll gladly look into it and I'll gladly take the time to put something like that out. What I would like to eventually do, if this channel ever got to 100,000 subscribers, I would like to do a weekly live show where you guys call in with your questions and we discuss nothing but antiques and collectibles. I take viewers' questions live. I answer them on camera. And we also talk about certain dynamics and fundamentals that are happening in the antiques and collectibles trade. That is one of the ideas that I have for this particular platform if it does get to the point where I have 100,000 subscribers or so. Remember, guys, I am not tech savvy. I do everything on Apple computers, Apple iPhones, Apple iPods, whatever, MacBook Pros, simply because I consider them to be the easiest to use. I've used Apple products my whole life. I do not like PC. I do not like the Google platform. So as a result, my tech knowledge is actually quite limited, which is probably surprising to some of you out there. But I am a diehard Mac fan. So if I can find a way at some point in the future to transition this into some type of podcast where I still do YouTube, but I also have a podcast in addition to this, that would be ideal. But nothing is announced on that as of yet. Next question. Sean, I have a question about world gold coins. I've been looking for information, but it's getting difficult. Any places I can search info on this market? You didn't state what country. Just by stating world gold coins, I can only guide you generically. What I will tell you is if you log on to Amazon, if you go to your local bookstore, even Barnes & Noble, they should have a price guide to world coins. that's going to be your best bet. Now, if you told me, I'm interested in world gold coins from China or the United Kingdom, I could then narrow it down. But because you just asked the question generically, all I can do is give you a generic answer, and that's going to be it. I think Krause Publications publishes a price guide related to world coins. Gold coins would be covered in that book. So that's probably where you want to start. Next question. Sean, congrats on 3,000 subs. As a musician, I am curious about your opinion on the antiques and collectibles market for music, whether we're talking instruments, gear, sheet music, etc. Okay, this is where we got to divide this question into two equal parts. First, there are antique violins and other stringed instruments out there that are on the antique side of the trade, mature side of the antiques market, that literally sell for millions of dollars. Those particular items are blue chip investments if you can afford to play in that market. So from that standpoint, I love antique stringed instruments. They have been going up in value exponentially for the last few decades, to be 100% honest. There's a lot of high-profile musicians out there, whether they're classical musicians, even new age artists, Enya, Yanni. A lot of those musicians do flock to that part of the market, and they want to buy some of those expensive pieces as investment-grade items. So that side of the market is very, very well established, very, very investment-focused. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the musical instruments from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even the 1980s. Your Fenders, your Stratocasters, items like that have been rising exponentially because a lot of people that are getting into collecting electric guitars, amps, items from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, coveted rock era, a lot of those particular items are accelerating in value. Unfortunately, unless those musical instruments, like you get an electrical guitar that was used by Kurt Cobain, or to use a favorite artist of mine, Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, if it's something like that, that item will be a blue chip investment going forward. I really think, though, over the course of the next 10, 20, 30 years, a lot of the esoteric prices that we're seeing for some of these vintage rock musical pieces are going to start to subsidize. So you really have to keep your hand on the pulse if you are invested in that market for the long term. Again, I did a video where I talked about collecting categories that are dying. And I talked about how I would not be investing in Beatles memorabilia. Well, as you should know, because this is YouTube and there's a lot of trolls out there, somebody reached out to me in the comment section and they said, Sean, you're an idiot. Did you see what a pair of glasses worn by John Lennon sold for? You're talking about the top 1% of the trade. That particular item is not representative of all the collectibles out there that represent the Beatles. So you cannot just pick and choose which collectible and go, see, I'm going to prove you wrong, when you're talking about the top to 3% of the trade. So that's where I'm going with this. In other words, if you're invested at the top of the market, you're okay. It's everybody else that has to monitor these collecting categories religiously and vigorously, because if the market starts to fall, that may be a signal that you may want to sell. You may want to dump your holdings and get out. So I hope that answers your question. Overall, music is an esoteric market in the antiques and collectibles trade. You have to divide it up, though. You can't just look at it in one aspect. It has to be, what type of instruments are you talking about? To answer your other question about sheet music, I do not like sheet music. I don't like any of the vintage antique phonographs and any of those particular pieces either for long-term investment. So you got to be really careful as to where you are invested in this market for the long term and or the short term. Next question. Sean, what camera do you use? Your audio and video quality is really good. That's quite funny because when I first started this channel, I would get a lot of comments on the video and the audio quality of this particular YouTube channel. I will answer your question though. When I first started doing videos on YouTube, the first couple were done with an iPhone 5S, believe it or not. I then graduated to an iPhone 7. I am now using, believe it or not, an iPhone 11, not an 11 Pro, just an iPhone 11 to record these videos. And what I do is basically I turn off any distractions. So that's why the quality of the audio has increased. I do not wear a microphone at present time. If I get into doing this more full time, I will probably invest in some equipment. As of right now, I have not decided whether I'm going to invest on anything for this channel at present time. I have to see how it does, subscriber-wise, view-wise, what's happening with the YouTube algorithm and the like. Next question, and that was a very good question. Thank you. Sean, I would like to see more videos on Legos, general investment videos, and personal finance and passive investment videos. Yes, they are coming, guys. It is taking me a while to do some of these videos. You know, I don't think my average viewer understands. I did a video on currency collecting where I showed several high-value pieces from my own collection, and I talked about collecting U.S. large-size notes. That video, just for planning, for plotting what I wanted to say, to recording the video, to uploading to the YouTube algorithm, I probably have 4 to 5 hours invested in that video alone. That video right now is only sitting at 1,000 views. Now, did I expect a video like that on hype-driven YouTube to be one of my #1 videos? No, but you guys got to understand, for me to put forth the time to release a video like that, it at least has to get viewed by X number of people for me to count it as a success. Now, I knew when I started this channel, certain videos are going to be more popular than others. For instance, I talk about Pokemon, I mentioned Magic the Gathering, I mentioned video games, I mentioned comic books. Those videos will get 2,000 views like that. There are some videos on this channel that have 7,000 views already because they were launched literally, a year ago? And they're now getting into regular rotation on the YouTube algorithm. So as a result, I don't mind taking the time to do esoteric content, but it has to be in also relation to other content that I know is going to get viewed more desirably by my viewers out there, by the YouTube algorithm, and even my critics, because my trolls love when I do a video on like coin collecting or currency collecting or on high-end antiques, because they come along and they hit the downvote. They actually downvote the video, not realizing that because you interact it with the video, it actually tells the YouTube algorithm that they should play that video more and they should show it to more people. So that's one thing that I do want to state to you guys at the end of this video. Those trolls out there that come on my videos and either leave me a negative comment or they downvote the videos, I actually thank you guys, because all you're doing is telling the YouTube algorithm that you want this video to be seen by more people. The only way downvoting works against the YouTube creator is, let's say that I put out a video that's really bad and I get something like 100 downvotes and only 50 upvotes. In that case, because the downvotes are more than the upvotes, YouTube will start showing that video less and less. But overall, if all my videos out there have 100 upvotes and somebody comes along, 10 people come along and give me downvotes, according to the YouTube algorithm, I'm fine. I'm in the 90th percentile. You see how that works? So I just wanted to clarify that, and at least at the end of this video, so you guys understand how the YouTube algorithm works to your advantage or works against your advantage as a creator. So that concludes the 3,000 subscriber Q&A series. Again, if I did not answer your question, let me know in the comment section below, and I will gladly either do a bonus Q&A series, or I will make sure that in the 3,500 subscriber Q&A series, your questions do get answered. Thank you, and have a great night.